Hey everyone, Dinosaur here, and today we're going to be talking about the difference between playing the trading card game in paper and playing online with simulators. Now, I do want to make one point very clear. This is not to bash sims. I personally don't play them too often. However, I do find them as an extremely useful tool, and I would never want to take anybody's way of playing away from them or say that it's bad. Some people can only play online. They don't have a local place to go to, but I think there is a pretty significant difference between the two of them, and we're going to talk about that today. To start off, I do want to say that most of this is excluding Dueling Book, as that is a very modular. It doesn't really do anything for you. You still have to, click your things and tell your opponent when you need to interact. It's basically playing paper, but online. And to the purpose of today's video, we're just gonna pretty much focus on YGO Omega and Master Duel, which I know Master Duel is a different format than the TCG. It's also a different format than the OCG, but it still is an online simulator that is Yu-Gi-Oh! And same thing with YGO Omega. You can kind of play whatever you want on that software, but still, some things don't work exactly as they should, and that's going to be our first point today. So point one is you can't trust online simulators, especially automatic ones. Like I said, we're excluding Dueling Book because that is up to the players, but you can't trust the online simulators to get every ruling accurate. And sometimes there's just a glitch, too, where you can't do anything, where you go, oh, that's not a misplay, I'm not misplaying because I should be allowed to do this, but the software just won't let you do it for whatever reason. Now, Master Duel is a little bit better than a lot of everything else, as that's actually run by Konami. Omega has had some hiccups, but of course, you just cannot trust a sim for accurate rulings. Now, in the sim, say Master Duel, oh, this is how it works in Master Duel. Okay, cool, that's not how it works in the TCG. And the reason for this is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is such a complex and, to be frank, a convoluted game. It's just everything is so just cascading. There's so many things, and of course there's going to be errors, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here, where it's like in paper, you're going to be able to deduce, you can ask a judge, you can ask other players that might know better. Usually there's 1 to 3 or even at my locals there's like 6 judges who come and play, and it's just, you can always ask and make sure you clarify, and the sim is just not always going to be accurate with that. A second point that I'm going to kind of make against simulators and why you really can't trust them is they don't necessarily teach you how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Master Duel will go, hey, this is how you use the software, but it doesn't really teach you how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, actually, Duel Links is something that actually teaches you how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I recommend any new player that wants to play Yu-Gi-Oh! I recommend them start with Duel Links, upgrade to Master Duel, try sitting down playing the TCG, grab a couple Blue Eyes structure decks, and just off to the races. But the softwares don't necessarily actually show you everything, and part of playing in paper and the TCG is understanding the problem-solving card text that was implemented years ago. And if you don't understand that, or you don't understand how it works, you're going to struggle by playing in paper. You're going to be like, why doesn't that work? It says that it should, but no, it's, where is your semicolon? How is it worded? Is this an unclassified effect? Is this a built-in summon? Does this activate in the hand? Like, just things like that, where you have to understand what they do, where the simulator will do that automatically for you. And so you really need to put in a lot of repetition in the simulator to kind of have that start clicking in your brain, where if you're going to play that on paper, somebody's going to tell you to do it that way once, maybe twice, maybe the third time before you're finally like, yeah, this is exactly how this card works. But in paper, you learn that a lot quicker. You learn how your cards interact with other cards a lot quicker, rather than just, we call them my thing was glowing, so I clicked activate. The people that, I'm sure if you've played online before, I've had somebody effect Veiler my Fabled Lurry when it came back from the graveyard, which is very clearly not right, but it's their effect Veiler glowed in their hand. It said, did you want to activate this? They clicked yes, they did it, and it was done. And they didn't really learn anything other than, oh, maybe I don't effect Veiler Fabled Lurry next time. But that's one of my biggest issues with The Sims is it doesn't exactly teach you that. Shifting gears here just because I have kind of hit 2 negatives on simulators lately. The TCG can be extremely expensive, and we're talking cards like Fiendsmith Engraver, Mulcharmy Fuelos, Perulia, almost anything. And I mean, even when the Fiendsmith stuff first came out, Fabled Lurie, which was a 25-cent card, shot up to roughly $14 market price on TCG Player, which was just wild to see, so they reprinted it. Now, of course, you could say, Dana, yeah, that's next week we're getting Fiendsmith Engraver and Fuelos reprinted, but we're not getting Meowls, we're not getting Primite Lordly Load. You know, we are getting some of that stuff back, but I mean, even the Ryziel deck, almost every Ryziel is still $20 to $30, and I mean, Malice, I mean, you're looking at a huge price increase once Alliance Insight comes out, and depending on what is on the ban list, of course. I mean, if they hit, you know, if they hit White Binder, nobody's going to play Malice, but that's just the thing. It could be extremely, extremely expensive, especially to keep up with. It can also be extremely cheap. Like I said, grab 3 Blue Eyes structure decks, off to the races. Now, if you want to upgrade that, then you shill out for the Primite stuff, which I guess we're getting a reprint on Lordly Load at some point soon, but I mean, the Dragon from Supreme Darkness, I think it's Barrel Ether or Ether Barrel. That card is still going to be worth a little bit of money. We're getting, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. I would guess that we're getting a second wave of Mitsurugi support at some point in the future, which means Ritual's going to go up. They're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff like that, and it's just going to continuously cost money. Same thing. Look at 7th Tachyon from Maze. This card was just so expensive, and it still is. And I mean, when I say expensive, we're talking $20 plus, right? You know, you gotta have 55 cards for your main deck, including your sideboard, and then another 15 for your extra deck, which can be really expensive. You know, example, SP Little Knight, when that first came out in AGOV, and that came with, I think Prom Princess was in that set too, and it can just be really, really expensive sometimes. So I understand where, oh, I want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! For free or for cheap. You play a simulator, or you buy the cheap deck and you don't perform as well. Another point I want to make is specifically just about rogue decks in the TCG, where you can sometimes buy a core for $10. But you still need to fill that with your Ash Blossoms, your Imperms. I think Imperms are like $8 or something a piece right now. Now, if you already have all of your generics, Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be very cheap for you, unless you're playing at the highest competitive level. So, like, say you're a Malice or a Ryziel player right now, especially if you're a Fiendsmith Ryziel player, it's extremely expensive, and you got to do that for almost every set, or you just got to buy your singles at, you know, a pretty inflated value. So, you can play, say, you know, I was playing Tistina for the longest time, and because I had a little bit of extra cash floating around, I turned every card into a QCR that I could, which, you know, that's just me. But you can buy a Tistina core for maybe $20 for everything, because there's a couple secret rares in there that you got to get. I think there's 6 ultras that you have to purchase. No, Tainted is an ultra, so you got to get all of that still. But, like, just, you can play it cheap. However, I also had the Fiendsmith stuff cards. I had, you know, I had Perulias, Fuelos. I even had Meowls in my sideboard in that deck. Like, I just had everything that was still extremely expensive, because they're just cards that you kind of need. So, like, even if you want to play, like, Ryugi, you know, or the Dinosaur package, or just, you know, Earth Machine, something that you can build for pretty cheap, you still need to have all of those expensive generic cards. Now, like I said, once you got them, you can, it's, you know, free reign for the most part. You know, Konami might hit them, whatever, but it can be a pretty big, you know, startup investment to getting into the game. Alright, I'm going to hit a positive on simulators. So far, everything that I've talked about has been negative, and I don't want that to be my channel. I don't want that to be this video. There are a lot of positives about playing simulators, and one of these positives kind of negates the negative that I was talking about before, where if you play it enough, you will start to understand how your cards work. You'll understand what the words mean on the cards, and you can eventually kind of take away the, you know, the training wheels on, say, Master Duel, or I think Omega even has like a you know, prompt everything type of deal where it's, you know, your opponent does something, would you like to do anything, basically. And I think you can kind of take those training wheels off. You start to play a little bit better, more interactively, and then adjusting to the TCG on paper would be a lot easier. So grinding, you know, your basically just grinding experience on these simulators is still a very good option for a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and a lot of the pros do the same thing. I do play simulators sometimes, especially to try new decks, which is going to move us on to our next point. That being that the TCG is a lot harder to try new decks without printing off proxies, which, by the way, does cost you money because of ink and paper still. So, and you have to have a printer in the first place, and all of the trial and error getting them the right size, or you're just writing down the card name or whatnot, right? It's a lot easier to go onto a simulator and figure out how your deck works, see where some things interact, you know, some effects, the quick effects, negates especially, can only interact at certain times, you know, say, you know, things in the damage step, because that is such a nightmare to learn at first, is how the damage step works. But we got, you know, a whole bunch of stuff on simulators where you can go, oh, I want to try this one specific random card. For example, the Chaos Allure Queen version of Malice that a lot of people started playing. Well, I don't want to say a lot of people, but a rogue few people did start playing that at bigger events and doing well with it. Trying that out on a simulator before investing in Allure Queens or having them shipped to your house for TCG player and waiting 2 weeks for it is a really good idea to hop on and just try something out. Same thing with just any of the decks, say, that I have on my channel that you're like, oh, I never knew that, maybe I want to go try it. You know, Goaty, Altergeist, specifically Testino, which is what I've done the most videos on. Like, you know, Adamancipator with the Magnet Warriors was really cool, and I actually started playing that on Master Duel before I got into playing the game in paper. So seriously, it's a very, very good way to test new things, especially against current metas. If you're high ranked, or even say on Omega you go into unranked, you even get to test against unreleased cards on there. So now for a positive for the TCG experience, and that is it's an experience and it builds community. So not only are you going to find other like-minded people that want to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're going to also disagree with some people on, you know, what your favorite cards are, what your favorite deck is. Oh, this person hates that deck. They never want to play against you ever again. You know, of course, there's going to be a little bit of salt, you know, IRL, but it does build community. You will make friends going to a local tournament, and those friends might also want to, say, go to a YCS or a regional or an OTS championship where you might meet more people and become friends with them. It's, you know, you can also do, say, online communities like Facebook communities. There's Discords, you know, local, you know, group chats for basically everything, and even your own niche archetypes, you know, are going to have groups. So that's one of the biggest things of the TCG is you're going out and you're doing something rather than sitting at home and just, you know, anonymously essentially playing against other anonymous people, where you're not really talking to them about, oh, maybe I should have done this, or maybe you should have done this because it would have stopped me from doing this. And you can talk about how maybe to beat each other, and then you both become better players from that experience. Another positive aspect of going to your locals and playing the TCG or whatever format you're going and playing, Edison is a popular one, a lot of people play hat format, goat format especially, is trading. You get to look at other people's collections, you get to find their cards. Maybe you don't want to pay shipping for a card, or you don't want to wait 2 weeks for it, and you have a card that is worth and they want that card, well, all of a sudden you have it. Now, of course, if you're playing a trading card game, you know that trading is a thing. Almost everybody has a binder. If you look behind me, there's a whole collection of binders back there where there's just cards in there that I don't need, I don't want. I would willingly trade them away for things that I do need. And that is something that you can also do. You can't do that on a simulator because every card is available to you. Now, you could, say, buy whatever, I always forget what it's called in Master Duel, the essence, if you will, that allows you to craft your cards. That stuff, or jewels, I think they're called. I don't know, someone correct me in the comments. But that stuff is essentially what the trading is. And the Pokemon TCG online actually did trading kind of well, where you put up an offer and somebody sees your offer and then it'll actually trade in the game, which is pretty cool. It is a trading card game. That's what the TCG stands for. So that's a big aspect of playing in paper, is that. And that, again, kind of goes with the last point about community building and building your friendships with other like-minded players. Positive back to Sims is they're just good for grinding. If you already play the TCG, say you go to locals, you have a Friday night locals and you have a Saturday night locals, and they're each a half hour away, and you get to play 3 to 4 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh! Each time you go. That's a lot of time to, that's a lot of travel, that's a lot of waiting around for other people to finish their matches. Simulators, you can just bang, 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 just like keep going and going and going and going and learn every aspect of your deck and every aspect of the meta. It's a very good thing to grind on Sims, and I would never condemn doing that, of course. So simulators not only help you learn your deck better, say if you play, like I said, if you're playing in the TCG already and you're playing on Sims, you just grind and you become a better duelist. You learn niche interactions that you may not have learned. For example, my little brother plays Marincess religiously, and I know how to beat that deck, but sometimes he'll go to a YCS or a regional and he'll start the day off 4-0 just because people are inexperienced against what he's doing. But if you just know how to beat him, so you might run into that on a simulator that you wouldn't run into at locals. I'm going to kind of wrap up the video here with this point, and it is positive for simulators, which is they help the format change because people start to understand things. Like a lot of the time in the TCG, especially playing in paper, you'll find certain cards that are always in the beginning of every format because people haven't quite solved it yet in the TCG. And then by the end of the format, those cards are no longer in the top decks, and they're just waiting for the next top deck to come out, or, top deck, we should say, to be slotted back in where people are unsure of what to put in the deck or how it interacts. Simulators help solve that a lot quicker and makes the format a bit more interesting. And that's something that's really good about simulators. Not only does it do that, it also helps grow the game, where people, like I said, like some people don't have a locals to go to. They can't go to locals for whatever reason. They may be homebound or disabled or something, and that is not allowing them to, attend their locals, so they play online at simulators, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's a huge part of growing the game and, sparking interest in people that may not have had that interest in the first place when they saw the paper version of the game. Now, of course, I would love to have a healthy debate with anybody in the comments about what you think about simulators versus the TCG versus the OCG versus any format you want to talk about, because there are different things. Like Master Duel, you can't just go play an old format. You can't just set the rules to an old format. As far as I know, I don't really play Master Duel. I know on Omega you absolutely can do that. But, there's things like that. So please leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me where I was wrong. Tell me where I was right. Just let me know in the comments. I would love to have some kind of healthy debate about this. I'm pretty, gung-ho on playing the paper card game and building the community, because I think that's a really healthy thing that we can do as a society, is, stick to our communities. So let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe, shoot the video a like, and then I'll see you next time. So thank you so much for watching. Hey, it's Outro Dana here. I'm thinking of doing more discussion videos like this in the future, so let me know if you'd want to, hear some more of my opinions about the game or just anything like that. Also, I've got this little Nobby plushie here that I got from Mr. A Drive over at Alestral's A Drive, and I've been really getting into Alestrals lately and doing very well. So if you want to see some Alestrals content, let me know and I'll absolutely post some. So again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.